والحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وبعد. Obviously I have a bit of a cold. Hopefully inshallah it's not corona and I survive for another few weeks to give this halaqah. But I may cut it a bit short today if I feel like I can't go on. So inshallah we'll continue today from where we left off last week in the Seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. And we had arrived at a milestone when the Prophet ﷺ stood on the Mount of Safa and he called upon all of Quraysh and he announced Islam to them. As I explained before, Quraysh knew that he was a prophet and that he was talking about Islam. This was not something that they had not heard of. However, he had not made it a public matter yet. And Quraysh, their approach was, as long as it's not a public matter, they're not going to touch it. They're going to let it go, leave it alone. But the moment ﷺ made it a public matter, now Quraysh had to take a side. Now the nobles of Mecca, they had to take a side. They had to choose what their response was going to be. Are they going to accept his offer, ﷺ, accept his claim? Are they going to refuse it? How are they going to deal with it? So Quraysh could no longer be neutral. Up to this moment, up to the end of the third year of his bi'athah, ﷺ, of his prophecy, the nobles of Mecca were neutral towards his prophecy, sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So no one was saying anything because ﷺ was just choosing certain people. He was talking to certain individuals that he wanted to be a part of Islam, and he wasn't making a public matter, but now he did. He did that after he had spoken to his family and the two occasions that I told you the stories of last time. And I told you that when he made it public, as he was speaking in the midst of his explanation of what it means to be a prophet, what it means to believe in La ilaha illallah, as he's breaking down all these Islamic concepts to them, someone speaks out right in the midst of the group of people who are listening to him. This is very uncommon and improper at the time. If someone is speaking publicly, people listen. This is a known Arabic norm. There weren't very many norms in Arabia at the time, but this was one of them. And I'll give you a few more examples of this as we go along in the seerah. So he's speaking, alayhi salatu wasalam, and someone starts to blurt out, someone starts to heckle him, alayhi salatu wasalam. Literally as he's speaking. And unfortunately, the person who's doing it is someone who's very close to him. It's his uncle, it's Abu Lahab himself. Abdul Uzza ibn Abdul Muttalib, the Prophet ﷺ's uncle, starts to scream out as the Prophet ﷺ is speaking, and he's not saying something that is logical or rational. He's not arguing the Prophet ﷺ points. He's just cursing the Prophet ﷺ, just using profanity, just saying very rude things to the Prophet ﷺ as he's standing there. And this is not the first time, obviously. I told you we're going to go through the strikes of Abu Lahab. Abu Lahab will continuously harm the Prophet ﷺ throughout his life until Abu Lahab dies. Time and time again. And I will demonstrate for you each and every time the Prophet ﷺ's response. Because that's what I'm interested in. I'm interested in his response to his uncle. The uncle that his name is going to come in the Quran. If I were to ask you about those who opposed the Prophet ﷺ throughout his life, you can count for me a lot of names. You can give me Abu Jahl, you can tell me Abu Sufyan, you can tell me Uqba Abi Mu'ayth, you can tell me all these names. But I ask you, which of these names exist in the Quran? Does Al-As ibn Wa'il exist? Is his name there? Is Al-Walid ibn Mughira's name there? No. There are stories of what they did, but their names were never in the Quran. This is something of worth. It's important. The moment your name is in the Quran, that means your name from now on will be recited in the book of Allah until the day of judgment. Your name will always be known. That's why Zayd ibn Harith radiallahu anhu is special. His name is in the Quran. None of the Sahaba are. فَلَمَّا قَضَى زَيْدٌ مِّنْهَا وَطَرًا. He got that honor for his name, for you to get 30 hasana every time you say his name, radiallahu anhu. The only one of those who opposed the Prophet ﷺ whose name ended up in the Quran was the Prophet ﷺ's uncle, his own blood, Abu Lahab. There are a lot of reasons for that. There are a lot of reasons for why that happened. Some of those reasons are to establish the norm of Islam. That Islam is a religion, is a faith, is a way of life, is a methodology that goes beyond bloodlines. That everybody is welcome in. It's not just a family matter. The Prophet ﷺ's uncle's name is in the Quran. Not in a good way, unfortunately, but in the worst way possible. تَبَّتْ يَدَا أَبِي لَهَبٍ وَتَبَّ. After this happened, after the Prophet ﷺ was publicly mistreated by Abu Lahab, and he left ﷺ, he didn't say anything. He got down the mountain, didn't say anything, not one bad word, just left. His message, whatever of his message made its way to the people, he was happy with that and he left. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the next day would reveal to him this surah. تَبَّتْ يَدَا أَبِي لَهَبٍ وَتَبَّ مَا أَغْنَى عَنْهُ مَالُهُ وَمَا كَسَبَ سَيَصْلَى نَارًا ذَاتَ لَهَبٍ وَامْرَأَتُهُ حَمَّالَةَ الْحَطَبِ في جيدها حبل من مسد. You all know the surah, but what the meaning of the surah or the meaning that it carries is of extreme importance. Tabbat means may they be cursed or may they be damned. The hands of Abu Lahab, meaning what he did. Watab, and may he, all of him, not just what he did, but he as a person, may he be cursed as well. ما أغنى عنه ماله وما كسب. What did his wealth help him? How did his wealth help him, or how will his wealth help him? This surah is speaking to the Prophet ﷺ from Yawm al-Qiyamah. By the way, one of the issues you'll find in the Quran when you study the Quran is that some surahs are speaking to you from a different timeline. Some surahs are speaking from a different period of time. Some surahs are talking to you during the life of the Prophet ﷺ. Some are speaking to you from history, from back in the past, and some are speaking to us from the future. This surah is speaking to us from Yawm al-Qiyamah. This surah this is what you're going to hear. This is what he's going to hear on the day of judgment, Abu Lahab. He's going to hear these words. He's going to be told at that day, what did your wealth help you? What you made, what you earned, how did that help you? And I ask, what does that have to do with anything? Everything that we've seen so far from Abu Lahab, what does it have to do with wealth? I don't understand. What does wealth have to do with it? He stood up during the Prophet ﷺ's feast and he spoke out against him, said a few bad words. I didn't see any money involved. And now he stands up again when the Prophet ﷺ is publicly speaking and he heckles him and says something rude. I don't see how money is involved. The Quran is breaking it down for us a little bit. You see, Abu Lahab was a bit smarter than everyone around him, but not for the good reason. Abu Lahab listened to the Prophet ﷺ's narrative. He listened to it. He listened to what the Prophet ﷺ was saying. Why? Because he was very close to him. Abu Lahab was an uncle that was very close to the Prophet ﷺ, to the point where both his sons, Utbah and Utaybah, were engaged to both the Prophet ﷺ's daughters, Ruqayya and Kulthum, at the time. During all this that's happening, Abu Lahab's both his sons are engaged to the Prophet ﷺ's two daughters. I want you to keep that in very close family ties. Abu Lahab listened to the Prophet ﷺ's narrative. He came to a conclusion. He came to a conclusion that this is going to meaning if Tawheed works, meaning what's going to happen is all these idols that are on top of the Kaaba and around the Kaaba are going to fall. They're going to be removed. They're not going to be there anymore. And that means all the tribes in Arabia that show loyalty to Quraysh because they're allowed to put their idols on top of the Kaaba, all that loyalty is going to go away. Which means, once that loyalty goes away, that the rihlat al-shita'i wal-sayf, the travel or the caravans of the summer and the winter, that the people of Mecca, became wealthy because of, were no longer going to be protected by the treaties between Quraysh and between all the tribes. He just thought about it logically. Tawheed means no idols. No idols means no treaties. No treaties mean my business will start to fail. Abu Lahab came from the family of Abdul Muttalib, who came from Bani Hashim. I told you the Prophet ﷺ's family had high status. Banu Hashim had high status. They were never people of wealth though. They didn't have money. They were very rich, just not with money. They were rich with their reputation of good ethics and morals and the good and the khair that they did for people, but they were never rich financially. Abu Lahab worked very, very hard all his life to secure his family's future. He worked very hard and he built a business he was proud of. And it took him years to become wealthy. You're probably thinking, what, is he defending Abu Lahab? No. I'm running you through Abu Lahab's thought process. If we read a surah in the Quran and we don't benefit anything from it, then that is by far the biggest loss. If you read the surah and you think the surah is just there to point out Abu Lahab was an evil person and then we move on, then we haven't really learned how to read the Quran. Anything in the Quran is there so that you and I can reflect upon, so that we can make sure that we don't do the mistakes that the people before us did. Or else reading the Quran is going to be completely useless. If you read any surah that's talking about any group of people, Ad or Thamud or Fir'aun and his people or Banu Israel or Abu Lahab or anybody. You read about the mistakes they made and you don't take those mistakes and extrapolate them to your own life and see if you are making these mistakes or have the potential to make them and start making changes so that you make sure that doesn't happen. Then reading the Quran is not helpful at all. I'm giving you Abu Lahab's thought process. He worked very hard. He spent all his life working day and night to secure the money he had, the business that he began. And he became wealthy, and he became powerful, and he was a part of Dar al-Nadwa. He was part of the parliament of Quraysh. He sat there. He had a seat. He had a front row seat, and he had a vote in everything. Abu Lahab took pride in this, and he felt that he did this in the name of his family, Banu Hashim. And now Muhammad is coming around, and he's preaching a way of life that will take that all away. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is preaching something that will cause him to lose all of it. He's going to lose it all. So he opposed it. He didn't oppose the concepts the Prophet ﷺ was teaching. He didn't oppose Tawheed. He didn't hate the value system that the Prophet ﷺ was presenting. He just hated the consequences. You see, every person sitting here, figuratively speaking, there's a scale that's sitting. It's a part of life. It's always in your head or just above your head all the time. This scale. Just imagine this scale. This scale exists at every moment of your life. Every day, every moment, literally every decision you make, you have this scale. And within this scale, you put things. That's how you make decisions. You put on one side. I'll give you an example. You're sleeping and your phone goes off and it's Fajr time. 6:30, you slept at 2:30 or 4. It's very cold and you're nice and cozy in your bed. You're very aware that the moment you leave your bed, you lose 85% of the coziness. It never comes back fully, right? When you go back to bed after you pray, you never get that full amount of coziness that you had when you were sleeping in the bed before. So you're thinking, do I get up and pray? You're just lying there. Do I get up or not? This is when you're lying there thinking, your scale is right above you. You don't see it, but it's there. And you're putting things in both hands of the scale. First of all, I should pray, so that goes in this scale, depending on how heavy that is. And then you put, well, I'm tired. It's cold. I'll get up in 5 minutes. I'm too tired. I didn't sleep. And whatever it is you have on the other side, and you just drop and drop, and then the scale starts to move. And depending on which hand is heavier, that's what you'll do. That's your decision. You'll make your decision just based on that. That's how life works every moment of every day. Everything we do, we just put it. We have a scale, and we just put it up. It's very quick. We're very good at it. Abu Lahab there was something in his life that had an infinite weight. Listen to me very carefully. Everything in your life has a weight that you have assigned it yourself. You have given it a weight. You didn't do it consciously, you did it subconsciously. Your family's well-being has a weight. Your reputation has a weight. Your health has a weight. All these things have weight. So when you're stuck with a decision, you're putting in the two hands of this scale different things, and they all have weights that you've assigned them. And based on which is ever heavier, you're going to make your decision. Abu Lahab, unfortunately, has something in his life that had an infinite weight, meaning the weight was infinity, meaning it outweighed everything. It was his business, it was his wealth. It's what he worked for all his life to achieve. To him, touch anything. Touch anything you want, but don't touch my money. Don't come near my business or my money. You touch that and you lose all. I will fight until the end, to the bitter end. He is willing to go to Jahannam, and he did. Because don't touch his wealth. Just not, because it has an infinite weight. You can put anything else in the other hand. Because when you think about it, why didn't Abu Lahab accept Islam? I cannot think of a person who has more reason to be a Muslim than Abu Lahab. Are you understanding what I'm saying? I can't think of someone who had more of a reason to accept Islam. He is the Prophet ﷺ's uncle. He knows him very well. It's not like he's an estranged uncle that he doesn't know. He knows the Prophet ﷺ very well. He was there the day he was born. He was so happy the day the Prophet ﷺ was born that he freed slaves at a time when Islam wasn't even there. He just did it out of happiness with the Prophet ﷺ being born. He slaughtered sheep and he fed people the day the Prophet ﷺ was born. Both his sons are engaged to both his daughters Obviously, a father wouldn't want his children to be, his boys to be engaged if he didn't like the person. He loved the Prophet ﷺ. He was a part of his family. It's not like Abu Lahab came from a different family, as we're going to see examples very soon of people who refused Islam just because they didn't belong to the same family. They felt that there was some level of competition, so they didn't want. Abu Lahab is from Bani Hashim. He's related to the Prophet ﷺ. He knows the Prophet. He knows he's honest. He knows that he wouldn't lie. He is sure of all this. He loves the Prophet ﷺ prior to Islam. I can't imagine a reason why Abu Lahab, I can't understand why Abu Lahab didn't accept Islam. Why he wasn't one of the first Muslims. When you think about it, it makes more sense for Abu Lahab to be one of the first Muslims, not the opposite. Then why? Why did Abu Lahab refuse? Well, that's why he was pointed out in the Quran. He was pointed out here because he was the least likely person not to accept Islam. Maybe you can understand the excuses of Abu Jahl and Uqba and others. Maybe you can accept these excuses. I'll give you an excuse that may make some sense. But Abu Lahab, why? Why would Abu Lahab say no? There's literally no reason. And if he's not going to become a Muslim, then why would he have animosity? Abu Talib, for example, as far as we can tell, didn't accept, at least throughout his life. But he was never an enemy of the Prophet ﷺ. The same thing goes for Hamza and Abbas and all the other uncles. Most of them didn't accept Islam until later. Most of them didn't accept Islam at all. But none of them were enemies. Why did Abu Lahab decide to become an enemy? Why did he go to the complete opposite? It's just a scale. The Prophet ﷺ, with his narrative, threatened Abu Lahab's money. He threatened his business, his wealth. And that was it. No. I have a question for myself and for you. Do you have something in your life that has an infinite weight to it? Is there something in your life that has an infinite weight, that outweighs everything? Everything. It's a very dangerous thing to have. You may have it, it's just that time and life has not exposed it yet. But having something like that is very dangerous. If someone tells me, my family is an infinite weight, so what does that mean? If at some point you can't make enough money through a halal source to take care of your family, you'll use a haram one? Is that what you're saying? Because that's what's going to happen. Anything, anything. If anything has an infinite weight in your mind and heart, it's a dangerous thing, except one thing. Except al-haqq. Except doing the right thing. Except righteousness. Except the truth. The only thing in Islam that has an infinite weight is al-haqq. Everything else should be meaningless. That's why when you're lying there and your alarm went off in Salat al-Fajr, all you need to tell yourself is that the right thing to do right now is to pray Fajr. That's al-haqq. That's the truth. That's righteous right now. Anything else besides praying Fajr now is batil, is falsehood. And that should have the infinite weight. It's very simple. You're lying there and you put it on the scale. And you like to pray Fajr, but you're tired and you're cozy and it's cold and you're warm. And if those things, then it'll start going back and forth. And one day you'll pray Fajr, and the other day you won't, because it's somewhat similar. Other people, it's the opposite. Fajr has no meaning to them at all. That means nothing. There's no weight for this prayer at all. They don't even put the alarm on. Correct? Some people don't care for Fajr. They're not Muslim, or they're Muslim, but they don't care for these things. They don't even put the alarm on because it's not something they care about. And others, the moment it goes off, they're up. Because the weight of this, it outweighs everything else. I'm tired, I'm cold, yes, all that has some weight. But I'm putting it up against infinity. Something that weighs an infinite weight in my heart and my mind. I wouldn't even think twice. I get up, I move. That's why the Prophet ﷺ never hesitated in his life to do the right thing. You will see this throughout his life, ﷺ. But the problem is sometimes we don't see it. We get accustomed to it. We think everyone can be like that. We think everyone can be like him, ﷺ. Never hesitate to do the right thing, to say the right word, to be merciful and compassionate and patient and perseverant at times of difficulty. We think that's normal. It's not. It's not. What if you're willing to live has an infinite weight? And that's just normal. That's just biological. We want to live. We want to live forever. As a Muslim, haqq has to be, al-haqq has to outweigh our willing and our love of life itself. It has to outweigh the love of life itself. And if it doesn't, then it's just a matter of time before that's exposed. That will be exposed. Mark my words. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala puts us through life for the reason that we're here. There's a good reason for it. We will be tested. We will be trialed. And if there's something in our lives that outweighs doing the right thing, outweighs righteousness, it will be exposed. At some point, it will be exposed. Abu Lahab, this was his trial. His money, his wealth. He failed. He failed. He turned against his own nephew, the person he knew was speaking the truth, because of wealth. ما أغنى عنه ماله وما كسب. Well, Abu Lahab, how did your wealth help you? He's talking to him Yawm al-Qiyamah. Tell me, what has your wealth done for you now? سيصلى نارا ذات لهب. It's not. And you'll be punished. وامرأته حمالة الحطب. It's a hard part of the surah. He talks about his wife. حمالة الحطب. She's kindling the fire. She's bringing fuel to the fire. Literally? Not really. It's more figuratively. It's not just him, it was his wife. Together they did it as a unit. This is a very scary surah. It's very scary. Not only the person who made the mistake, but those who caused it, those who contributed to it. في جيدها حبل من مسد. The word masad, habl min masad, is the rope that they used to carry scales with a long time ago. Right? That's what the masad is. It's the rope. They used to, you know old time scales? That's what a masad is. You held the scale with it. So observe that scale every day. Because every moment of our lives, we're doing that. He failed his, and his name was forever in the Quran for it. The Prophet ﷺ, during this period of talking about going public with Islam, his narrative was قولوا لا إله إلا الله تدخلوا الجنة قولوا لا إله إلا الله تدين لكم بها العرب والعجم يعني بشروا ولا تنفروا يسروا ولا تعسروا. His narrative was say لا إله إلا الله, you'll enter Jannah. Say لا إله إلا الله, and one day you will rule. You will rule all of Arabia and all the surroundings of it. Say La ilaha illallah and be optimistic and don't be pessimistic. The Prophet ﷺ began his da'wah with an optimistic outlook. He didn't start his da'wah by talking to people about punishment. He started his da'wah telling people, you accept this way of life and you will become prosperous. You accept this way of life and you will thrive. And you will become successful and change will occur within this region. That was the narrative he was sending publicly, alayhi salatu wassalam. Quraysh couldn't be neutral anymore. So the persecution began. Quraysh is going to try, we're going to go through it together. Quraysh is going to try everything. Quraysh is going to try with the Prophet ﷺ and with the Sahaba everything they can. You're going to be wondering at some point during these stories, who's stronger? Quraysh, Mecca, the nobles, or the Prophet ﷺ? Even though he's outnumbered. He's outnumbered by far. Up to this moment, maybe he has 200 people, maybe. There's a lot of controversy around how many people how many Muslims there were in the first 4 years. We're not sure. Top number 200, maybe, not even. He was outnumbered. He didn't have a lot of wealth behind him. He didn't have the leaders. When he went to the parliament of Mecca, he didn't get them. He didn't get Abu Hakim ibn Hisham. He didn't get Al-Walid ibn al-Mughira. He didn't get these people. He didn't get the big names. They refused. His own uncle, Abu Lahab, who was a part of this, also refused. So he didn't have the social strength. He didn't have the political strength behind him, alayhi salatu wasalam. So he's going to start getting persecuted, alayhi salatu wasalam. I'm going to give you two examples of two surahs that were revealed just before this all went down. Just before the persecution began, two surahs were revealed. The Prophet ﷺ received Surah Al-Asr. Al-Asr, wal-Asr. I swear by time. Not Salat Al-Asr. Al-Asr means time. Wal-Asr, I swear by time. Inna al-insana lafi khusr. Indeed, the human being is in continuous loss. Of what? Of time. Whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes an oath, it's always directly related to what the surah is talking about. The human being is in continuous loss of time. We're always losing time. We're always losing time. Not just through our individual lives, but from a generational perspective, we're losing time. The reason that your parents get upset with you for mistakes that you made is because you're making the same mistake that they did. To them, this is a horrific waste of time. They made that mistake before. They did that. They know what comes of this mistake. It's not a good thing. Ya ibni, ya binti, my daughter, my son, listen to me. I made this mistake. And I walked down the road of this mistake and it's horrible. Let me win you some time. Let me save you some time. Don't walk down, don't do this. And then they do it anyway. And you lose your mind. And you have the right to, because it's so hard to see people waste time, especially that when all that we are, all we really are, is just time. We're just time. We're here for 80, 90 spins around the sun. It's just a ride. We're going to spin around the sun a couple of times and then move on. That's all it is. And time is the only currency that we actually have. And there's not much of it. Ask people who are in their older years. They'll tell you they remember being 20 and 30 like it yesterday. They don't know where the time went. They don't know how they're 40 and 50 and 60 and 70. They don't know. Just time passes by. We're in continuous loss of time. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. As human beings, we lose a lot of time. We make the same mistakes. We repeat them time and time again. Whether our own mistakes or the mistakes of those who came before us. But there's an exception, which is the whole point of this surah. Imam Shafi'i, by the way, he's quoted to say that if this was the only surah revealed, then it would have been enough. Through his study of the Quran, his comment was, had the Quran had nothing but this surah, that would have sufficed. You would have had enough fuel, enough concepts to actually build a community and build a society and build a civilization just with this simple understanding. Just 3 verses. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا, except those who believe. وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, and perform the deeds and the tasks that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created them to perform. Now listen to the 2 words after this. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. What does tawasa mean? Tawasa means they exchange advice. They exchange advice. Wasa means to give advice. Tawasa means to exchange it. We're in continuous loss of time until we, of course, believe in Allah and do the right thing. That's understood. If you don't believe in Allah, then your whole life is a waste. If you're not doing the right thing, then obviously everything you're doing is a waste. But amongst those who believe and do the right thing, in order for you not to be in loss of time, you need to exchange advice. Advice of what is haqq, what is righteous and what is worth living and dying for. And exchange advice regarding what is sabr, what is worth being perseverant for. And it's a 2-way road. When I sit and I give advice, that is wassa. I have not yet fulfilled the surah until I accept it. When I give my students advice, I have not yet fulfilled the surah until I accept their advice as well. Until I'm listening to them. Until just as much as you speak, you listen, you don't fulfill the surah's meanings. And this is what is missing. Within our societies and communities, this is what is missing. We don't listen anymore. Those who have knowledge and those who are in places of leadership and those who are a bit older, they have a lot to say. They have very little time to listen. And because they don't have time to listen, the other people who they're speaking to don't want to listen. And now we are at an ultimate level of time waste because no one's listening to anybody. And the mistakes are being... But when you look at the ummah, one of the things that makes me want to bang my head against the wall is the number of mistakes that we repeat generation after generation, place after place. It's the same thing. We have been complaining about the same problems since the day I could understand language. From the day I started to understand people speaking, it's been the same complaints and same problems and same issues in 3 continents. Wallahi, the same stuff every day. Every community, every family, everything is just the same thing time and time again. We literally wait for times in the year to fight about the same stuff. Every year. Just around the time of the Prophet's birth date, or sometime around Ashura, or sometimes around anything. It's just the same time, so we can start fighting over the same stuff again and again and again. And it is so hard to understand why. Why can't we seem to find solutions? It's because this is not this very simple concept that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made sure the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had just before the persecution began. Just before it got really, really rough, and it's going to get very rough. I will share with you only a fraction of the stories that exist, and I'll let you go and look for the rest of them, because some of them are too brutal for me to tell you. It's going to get very rough, but we're carrying this concept very clearly. In order to get out of this, we need to communicate. We need to network. We need to fix our problems. We need to find solutions. And it has to be a 2-way road. The Prophet ﷺ didn't just sit there and give advice and tell people what to do. He listened ﷺ. Nobody listened better than him ﷺ. You want to learn from him? Learn to listen the way he did. وَمِنْهُمْ, listen to the Surah At-Tawbah. Listen to what it talks about the Prophet ﷺ, so you believe me, because maybe you're saying, now you're making things up. Listen. وَمِنْهُمْ الَّذِينَ يُؤْذُونَ النَّبِيِّ وَيَقُولُونَ هُوَ أُذُنٌ. And some of them will harm the Prophet ﷺ. And when you ask them, why are you doing that? You say, هُوَ أُذُنٌ. Udhun means an ear. He's not an ear literally, alayhi salatu wasalam, but figuratively he listened. He would listen to people, they would come and they would say things, and sometimes the things that they're saying would turn into abuse, would turn into profanity and something improper. But he's listening, alayhi salatu wasalam. قُلْ أُذُنُ خَيْرٍ لَكُمْ. Say, yes, he is an ear of goodness for all of you. He listens to you, alayhi salatu wasalam. He's continuously listening to you. And then he answers you based on what, that's how he lived, alayhi salatu wasalam. This is what the surah is saying. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ. I need to advise those around me of what is righteous, and they need to do the same for me. I need to advise those around me of what is worth being perseverant for, what is worth being patient for, what is worth working hard for, and they need to say the same to me. And that is how we grow. And that is how we stop wasting and losing time, or else we are going to continuously lose time. We are in a continuous state of time loss until this is fixed. Until we start listening and advising one another. Or else, 10 years from now, some other dude will be sitting in my place saying the same stuff, complaining of the same problems. It's going to be the same thing. Nothing's going to change. We're just going to keep on doing this, perpetuating the same problems until we change the way we approach it, until we start following what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught in the very simple surahs of the Quran. I'm not asking you to go and study Surah An-Nisa in detail. Just listen, read Surah Al-Asr. Just make sure that that's clear to you, that that's how we're supposed to be. So my son and my daughter, my younger brothers and sisters, when you are advised by those older than you, listen. Listen. Because what you're being told is the experience of a lifetime before you. Believe me that those who are telling you not to do something are telling you not to do it because they have done it before you. But sometimes they're too embarrassed or ashamed to tell you that they made that same mistake. But that's the only reason. Don't do this because we've already walked down that road. It's a horrible road, don't walk down it. And my brothers and sisters who have children or are talking to youth, listen to what they have to say. Do not brush off what they're trying to tell you. Don't act like it's unimportant. Don't interrupt them and tell me, no, I've heard this before. Listen so you can understand what the struggle is. So you can put your finger on what actually is, what they actually need so that we can grow. Or else it's just going to be frustration and loss of time. Surah At-Takathur was revealed to the Prophet ﷺ. Beautiful surah. Alhaakum At-Takathur. You have been distracted by wanting more. Takathur is mostly in the books at school. If you went to an Arabic school, then it's usually explained as having children, reproduction. And that's the biological term, and that's proper. But the actual word in Arabic doesn't mean reproduction. It comes from the root of kathra or kathir, which means a lot. Takathur is wanting more, wanting a lot. Alhaakum at-takathur. You have been distracted by wanting more. Of what, Ya Rab? Of everything. You just want more. Whatever it is that you have, you want more of it. Anything good that you got, we want a little bit more. A little bit more money, a little bit more social status. We want more kids. We want more houses, more cars. We want a better reputation. We want more time off. We want to travel more. We want more of everything. It's just how we are. And that's fine. That's how we are. That's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us. There's nothing shameful about that. What the surah is saying is alhaakum. It has ruined your priorities. The problem is with the priority list. This is my theory. I've said this a few times before. This is my theory. My theory is that at some point during the history of Muslims, the Prophet ﷺ had passed down the list of priorities. He came to life was completely a mess, and he prioritized things for us. He made this beautiful list of priorities, and once we started to practice it, things worked for everybody. And then that list was handed down generation after generation, and things worked. And the Arabs and the Muslims went from a couple of tribes fighting in the middle of nowhere to an empire that ruled 3 continents, at the head of every good thing that happened for the last 1,000 years. And then we got lazy. And no one memorized that list. They just handed it down, and no one memorized it. All the priorities are stacked up, and we're just handing them down to the person behind us, hand it down, and then someone, somehow, at some point, I don't know when exactly, dropped all these priorities and scattered them all on the floor. And no one saw this person. And in a moment of panic, he went quickly and he started to put all the stuff on top of each other. But he never memorized the list properly. So he wasn't sure which one went on top and which one went on the bottom and which one in the middle. So he just stacked it to the best of his ability and then continued to give it to the next generation. No one saw this person no one saw them when they dropped the stack of priorities. And then that person in fear stood there waiting to see what's going to happen. Because he just passed these priorities down to the next generation. Things seemed to work pretty well. So he said to himself, I must have got it perfectly. Little did he know that when you mess up the list of priorities for an ummah, it takes a couple of generations before you see the effect. You'll be gone by the time the effect of your mistake is actually seen and felt. And we messed up our priorities. And we no longer knew what's important, what's less important. Until this day, we have not been able to get that priority stack organized properly the way he had it, alayhi salatu wasalam. Till this day, we don't know what's more important and what's less important. We don't know. We're still struggling with these things. We still feel haircuts are more important than a proper understanding of why you're a Muslim and why you're alive. And we still feel these things are more, I don't know why. We're not sure. We still think our appearances in front of people and the opinions of people in us is more important than our actual relationship in our hearts with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We still believe that somehow. Alhaakum at-takathur. You've been distracted. Your priority list has been ruined by wanting more. Hatta zurtum al-maqabir, until you die, until you visit the cemetery, which means you die. Kalla sawfa ta'lamun. Nay, indeed, one day you will know. Know what? Thumma kalla sawfa ta'lamun. And then again, yes, indeed, you will know. Probably he's talking about you'll know what's worth, what's priority and what's not. One day will come where you'll know it. كلا لو تعلمون علم اليقين لترون الجحيم ثم لترونها عين اليقين ثم لتسألن يومئذ عن النعيم. And in Arabic language, there's something missing in these ayat. There is something that has been taken. I'll tell it to you in English and you'll understand. The sentence is incomplete. He's saying, indeed, if you knew with certainty that one day you will see the hellfire with your eyes. If you knew with certainty that you will see it with the eyes of certainty, meaning you will see it and you'll have no doubt that what you're seeing is the truth, that you will see the punishment of Yawm al-Qiyamah with your own eyes. If you knew that there's a day that's going to come where you're going to be asked and held accountable for all the good moments that you lived. And that's how the surah ends. And even from an English perspective, there's something missing, right? The sentence I told you is incomplete. I'm telling you what he's saying, subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you knew that the day would come where you would see punishment, if you knew the day would come where you're going to be held accountable for what you have been enjoying in this life, and that's the end of the sentence. There should be continuation. Then you would have this. Yes, that's exactly what's left for the imagination. The scholars of tafsir say, لَمَا الْتَهَيْتُمْ. The answer is لَمَا الْتَهَيْتُمْ. You would have never been distracted. You would have never ruined your priorities. You would have never chosen something less important over something more important ever. You would have never done that. You would have always prioritized properly. These are the two surahs that were revealed to the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba just before the persecution began. And they're very important because some of the Sahaba's lives are going to be put on the line. Some of the Sahaba are going to die. Now what's more important? Is standing by what is right? Is standing by righteousness and believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and living a life of khair, or surviving? It's just a matter of priorities. And you'll see this time and time again. And I believe for a fact that had some of these surahs not been revealed during these periods, that the Sahaba would have responded to difficulties differently. But they didn't. I still find it hard to understand how they were able to stand their ground during a number of incidents that occurred during their lives. All right. I'm going to tell this story. It's a fun one. There was a man, and I'm going to start telling you the stories of the Prophet ﷺ's experience with persecution. going to start with the Prophet ﷺ's persecution, then I'll tell you about the Sahaba's persecution. So we'll go through them in that manner. So the Prophet ﷺ, as he was talking about when he went public, Al-Walid ibn al-Mughira, one of the head people in Quraysh, if you remember the story of rebuilding the Kaaba, I told you he's the guy who had the guts to actually bring down the first piece of brick. Right? And he is someone from Quraysh who's a very known figure. He is the father of Khalid ibn al-Walid, who we'll later talk about in detail. But Al-Walid ibn al-Mughira was a man of wealth, was a man of status, was a man of fame in the region. And he was basically the leader of the parliament at the time. People came to him for advice. So Al-Walid would say something down the lines of أَأُتْرَكْ أَنَا وَيُرْسَلْ هُوَ وَأَنَا عَظِيمُ قُرَيْشٍ. How is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would choose him over me, and I am the best man in Quraysh, I am the most powerful, I'm the most intelligent, I have the most money. How could Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala choose him over me? This is what he's saying. You hear the arrogance in his narrative. That's what he's saying. So the Prophet ﷺ would hear this. So he would go to him, and he would speak to him, and he would talk to him about Islam. And he would take time to talk to Al-Walid, and he would recite upon Al-Walid the Quran. And Al-Walid's listening to the Quran. And something's changing in his heart. He's hearing these words, and he's slowly starting to feel something different. As he was and the Prophet ﷺ was optimistic about it. He felt that this may work, because if Al-Walid was to accept Islam, then everything would change. The story of his life ﷺ would be different. I would be telling you a different story. There would be no hijrah to Medina. There would be no need for it. And when the nobles of Mecca felt that was happening, they decided immediately to kind of jump the gun. And they went to Al-Walid and they said, Ya Walid, ما تقول فيما يتلوه محمد. What should we say about what Muhammad is saying? I mean, we need some narrative to counter what he is doing. What should we say? أنقول عنه ساحر? Should we say that he is a wizard? فقال الوليد لقد رأيت السحرة وسمعتهم وسمعت طلاسمهم وما هو بساحر. No, I know wizards, and I've heard their sorcery and what they say and how they act. He's an experienced man in life, and this man is not a wizard. فقالوا إذن نقول عنه شاعر. Then we'll call him a poet. We'll say that he's a poet, and he's coming up with all this weird poetry. فقال لقد عرفت الشعر والشعراء وسمعت شعر العربي والعجمي والإنسي والجن. I have listened to the poetry of Arabs and non-Arabs and humans and jinn, and this is not poetry. وما هو بشاعر. This is not poetry. He's not a poet. فقالوا إذن هو كاهن. Then he must be a sorcerer of some sort. فقال لقد رأيت الكهنة وأفعالهم وأكاذيبهم وخداعهم وما هو بكاهن. I've seen the sorcerers and their lies and their illusions, or an illusionist, a better word for kahin could be. And he's not one of those. Every time they come up with an example, he shoots it down. He says, no, he's not this. No, he's not that. فقالوا إذن هو مجنون. He must be insane, or he must be ill. فقال لا ليس بمجنون. No, he's not insane. We know the guy. He's not insane. There's nothing. فقالوا فكيف وجدت قوله. Then how would you describe what he is saying? So Al-Walid, in a moment of truth, in a moment of purity, of sincerity, as he's thinking, I don't know what to call him. We can't call him a wizard. We can't call him a sorcerer. We can't call him an illusionist. We can't call him a poet. We can't call him insane. We can't call him anything, really. What about the Quran itself that you're listening to? What do you think about it? What do you have to say about it? فقال والله إن لقوله الذي يقول لحلاوة وإن عليه لطلاوة وإنه لمثمر أعلاه مغدق أسفله وإنه ليعلو ولا يعلى عليه. He said, to be honest, what he says has this beauty, has this sweet nectar to it. And upon it there's this prosperity, and there is just this ease. There's this ease around it. And I feel like it's fruitful on the top of it, on the higher side. And it's generous from the lower side. And it's something that is superior to everything I've heard, and nothing I've heard has ever been superior to it. and the eyes of the parliament, of the people sitting there, are popping out of their faces. قال يا وليد ما تقول? What are you saying? أصبأت? Have you left? Have you left? What are you? Have you left your religion? Are you following? This is like the biggest musibah they could have possibly imagined. فقالوا أصبأت, and of course everyone in the room, have you left your religion? What are you saying? And of course Walid at that moment, he was just admiring this beauty that he had experienced. He'd never heard anything like this. He'd never heard anything like يا أيها المدثر قم فأنذر وربك فكبر وثيابك فطهر والرجز فاهجر ولا تمنن تستكثر ولربك فاصبر فإذا نقر في الناقور فذلك يومئذ يوم عسير على الكافرين غير يسير. He's listening to these words and he's like, this is just amazing. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose for to punish him, to continue the surah that he enjoyed the most with his talking about him. The surah he enjoyed the most, he enjoyed listening to Muddathir. So when he eventually refused Islam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chastised him through the same surah that he enjoyed. When they scared him, he said, no, I haven't left my deen. No, I'm still. What are you saying? Mughdiqun and muthmirun. What is this? فَقَالَ دَعُونِي, leave me some time to think. I need some time to figure out a narrative. I have to figure out what I'm going to say about him. So they left him. So he goes home and he sits there. He starts to think. He goes into deep thought and he starts to pick up he thinks of all of the experiences and all the things in his history that he can think of, trying to figure out, what am I going to call him? What am I going to say about him? Listen to the Quran describing to us how he behaved that day. إِنَّهُ فَكَّرَ وَقَدَّرَ. Indeed, he thought and he made assessments. قَدَّر is when you make an assessment. فَقُتِلَ كَيْفَ قَدَّرَ ثُمَّ قُتِلَ كَيْفَ قَدَّرَ. Yani, may he be damned the way he thought, and then may he be damned again for the way he thought. ثُمَّ نَظَرَ. So I want you to imagine Walid is sitting there. Nazar, when he looks into the horizon. ثُمَّ نَظَرَ. He looked far away, just staring into nothing. ثُمَّ نَظَرَ. ثُمَّ عَبَسَ وَبَسَرَ. Abasa is when you frown. Basar is when your face is so upset. You can sometimes, if you know your family members and they walk into the room, you can tell right away if they've had a good or bad day. Just something in their face will tell you. That's called al-basar. إذا بشر, that means there's something in his face that is telling you that he is upset. And of course, when we see someone like that, we poke at them more so that we completely end whatever potential of khair that could happen that day. Please, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you the ability to see in the face of someone that you love that they're upset, please be wise of how you'll proceed. ثُمَّ عَبَسَ وَبَسَرَ. And then he frowned, and then you could see on his face that he was in distress. ثُمَّ أَدْبَرَ وَاسْتَكْبَرَ. And then he made a decision. Then he turned his back to what he knew was right. وَاسْتَكْبَرَ. And he filled his heart with vanity and arrogance. فَقَالَ إِنْ هَذَا إِلَّا سِحْرٌ يُؤْثَرُ إِنْ هَذَا إِلَّا قَوْلُ الْبَشَرِ. And then he said, when he finally was going to speak and say what he thought of it, you need to come up with a narrative. He said, إِنْ هَذَا, all this is سِحْرٌ يُؤْثَرُ. It is magic. It's a form of magic that he learned from someone. He's not a magician, alayhi salatu wasalam, but what he is teaching is magic. Understand what I'm saying? Always, it's politics. In politics, that's what they do. They'll find a way to play with words so that they can get what they want. They're not going to call him a magician. He's not a magician. No, everyone knows that Muhammad ibn Abdullah wasn't a magician. But what they're going to say is that this is magic that he learned from someone else. Yu'thar means he took it from someone else, some other source. Sihrun yu'thar, that he learned magic from someone else. In هذا إلا قول البشر. This is just the words, the Quran, just the words of another person. Someone else is teaching him this magic. These words have magic in them. He learned them from someone else. He's not a magician. That way he gets out of having to call the Prophet ﷺ something that the people of Quraysh know he is not. Because if they're going to go and say he's a magician, people are going to like, what? No, he's not. Everyone knows he's not. That's a silly narrative. So they came up with something better. No, he's not a magician. But someone taught him this magic. Some man taught him. Someone. We don't know who. We're still investigating it. We don't know who taught him. And the parliament loved it. Perfect, perfect. This will work. And it did. It did work. سأصليه سقر. You'll be entered to the hellfire. وما أدراك ما سقر لا تبقي ولا تذر لواحة للبشر عليها 19. He was punished. He'll be punished يوم القيامة for what he did. I think we'll end with that, inshallah.